Hello and welcome to the Dustin and Eric Stay Inside podcast show, brought to you by Mimosa Networks. Hi, I'm Dustin.
I'm Eric.
And today we are talking about many things because we haven't been here in a long time. So this is episode number 32, I believe, correct?
That is correct.
Wow, such a high number, but I guess we've been doing these for a while now. But I guess the main topic today we're going to talk about is, what everybody already knows about in the whole world, COVID-19. And how, as you can see, we're working from home, as are most people in the world. COVID-19, though, hasn't been completely bad, at least for the wireless internet industry, because, that's brought about rapid change and emergency use of U-NII-4, which is 5850 to 5895, and potentially 6 gigahertz coming up, which Jamie's on here. Hi, Jamie. Welcome to the show. He'll talk about it in just a few minutes. So, Jeff, how's it feel working from home all the time?
I sure miss having lunch. The Eat Club lunch is there, but yeah, things are good. Making the best of it.
Yeah, I miss the food too. Eric, you've got some radio equipment behind you, huh?
Oh yeah, I'm not completely off the grid, but keeping an eye on things globally. Got radio circuits, global radio circuits in the background on HF radio, and got battery stuff on battery, backup battery, regional equipment, long distance global stuff. This is not an amplifier, this big box here. It's kind of an antenna tuner, a big matchbox to bring a couple of different antennas that I have. We're doing the best we can.
I'm sure the ham guys enjoy looking at that stuff. But anyway, back to topic here. Internet providers across the world over the past couple of months have seen a spike in internet traffic. Some of our customers have mentioned over a 300% increase in internet traffic because everybody's working from home now, or working from home, depending on which one it is. But like I mentioned, at least there's a little help from the FCC coming, the help with congested frequencies, congested spectrum, which is first is U-NII-4. So, Jamie, do you want to tell us a little bit about the work that's been going into this, and maybe quickly talk about the process that WISP should be doing to try and use this spectrum?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dustin. So the history on this band has been a little bit storied. So I'll start there. This has been a very quiet band right next to the very noisy U-NII-3 band, and mostly because it was granted to the transportation industry, who didn't do a dang thing with it. So for the last 2 years, there's been lots of discussion and arguments about it, but at the end of the day, the FCC saw fit to finally reallocate this and give the majority of the band back to the Wi-Fi community and abut it right up to the U-NII-3. The good news is that was happening, but the bad news is COVID-19 has also slowed that process down. So to speed things up, the WISPs and also Lerman Center, the Council for WISPA, pulled together for 32 different WISPs out there that wanted to open up the band and get early access to it via form of an experimental license. So what they're allowing now to happen is to allow actual commercial use of the band, which is actually pretty unheard of in experimental licenses for the FCC. They're, for the purpose of COVID-19, letting people get temporary 60-day licenses to be able to bump up their capacity. The coolest thing about the U-NII-4 band that you'll all like is that we finally have access to 80 and 160 megahertz channels now up in the upper part of the band. So this could be a huge deal for both capacity, and it's a dead quiet interference band up there. So how does one go about getting access to this U-NII-4 band as a temporary license? Well, first of all, you got to go to the FCC site, and we can post some links about how to do this, but you go there and file for an experimental license. And you basically don't really have to do too much work. It's really not that hard. And Dustin, he's been working with a lot of different guys and can provide a little bit of advice. Don't want to throw too much traffic his way. He's overwhelmed with people asking questions about how to do this. But it's a free process, generally speaking, and you just need to be able to fill in the gaps of information on the forms, and we can provide a little bit more information on that. The beautiful thing, though, is our radios already support these bands. We've had the foresight for working in other countries of using all the way up into the 6 gigahertz band for a number of our products. So Dustin can provide a little bit more detail on which products can do what, but we already have software out there ready to go on beta today for people to use. And we have a really great, easy process for expanding that for the people that have the license. So you got to prove to us you've gotten the temporary license, and then we'll give you access to that software and go through a new process for unlocking your radio to use that new temporary license.
Right. So as of right now, today, we have beta firmware for our point-to-point products. So C5C, C5X, B5C, and B5 can do U-NII-4. So if you can get the STA, and if you send me your information, then I can get that set up for you. And then next week, we will have point-to-multipoint firmware that will do that as well for the A5, A5C, and then the clients that go with that as well. If you're a lucky person who has an A5X beta or will receive A5X anytime soon, A5X can do it too. So just file for the STA if you want to use that spectrum, and send me a message and we'll get you fixed up. Or send a message to Jeff or Eric in support and they can get you set up. Also, we mentioned, and it has been going around being mentioned, 6 gigahertz. Jamie, you want to talk a little bit about what's happening there and what you think the timeline might be on that?
Yeah, sure. So we just got word this last week from the FCC that they've agreed to allocate all of the 6 gigahertz band to unlicensed, and that's a huge deal because there were a lot of people still, trying to lobby to provide some of that band to be auctioned. Now, if you all recall, the 6 gigahertz, as many of you have used in the past, is for Part 101 point-to-point licenses, and if you're familiar with the FCC's ULS database where all of these licenses live. In fact, you can actually go to our cloud website and we list all of those licenses right on our cloud point-to-point planner. So you can actually see the sites where all of the microwave links are. So this whole last few years, we've been talking about how can we make better use of that band, because there's not that much point-to-point in the band. We know it's hard to get licenses in that band for a lot of you, but there's a lot of places that can take advantage of adding Wi-Fi without interfering with existing microwave. So the FCC really deemed that this was critical to be able to add a lot of band capacity. And how much capacity is it? Well, it goes all the way up from 5.95 gigahertz all the way to 7.2 gigahertz. So we're talking about over 1.2 gigahertz of spectrum. And if you look at the rules, I just got a copy of the rules on Thursday of last week. The rules basically stipulate that outdoors will be able to use about 850 megahertz of that. So it goes from 595 up to about 6.8, I want to say. That's going to be a huge deal in adding very low noise capacity, taking advantage of these 160 megahertz channels that are going to be coming in all the 11AX products, hint, hint, that we're all working on. So that should be a really big deal. By the time you start to really take advantage of that, you'll easily be able to do gigabit plus speeds to subscribers in the near future. That said, to work outdoors, there's some new complexities. A lot of you probably follow what happened with CBRS in the 3.5 band. They've decided to add a database to be able to authorize radios. Well, the same thing's kind of going to happen here in this 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. And for reference, they're going to call these new Wi-Fi bands the U-NII-5, 6, 7, and 8. In our case, for outdoor and fixed wireless, we're going to be taking advantage of U-NII-5 and U-NII-7. Those two bands together, again, a little over 800 megahertz. The database is there to take the data from the ULS and to be able to do analysis as to whether or not the link or the coverage that you want to provide in multipoint is going to interfere with an existing microwave link. So really this is an unlicensed approach as opposed to licensed with CBRS. So it's a really simple lookup, and the access points are going to have to look up once a day to find out what channels that they could use at the site they're at. So there's a lot to digest. There's a lot of new rules. The one thing that's really a little disappointing to me was the access point rules are going to be standard EIRP limits at 36 dBm. The clients, however, the maximum is going to be 30. So it's very upside down from what we're used to with clients having higher EIRP limit than the access points. And in this case, we're going to be 6 dB less on the client. So a little disappointing that we're not going to get the range and the distance out of this band that we hope for. But it will, the reason they have to do that is if you have a client that's really close to the access point, it can really go pretty far beyond radiation-wise, beyond the access point location, and potentially interfere with the microwave behind it. So that's really the issue as to why they did that. I don't see that changing when the rules get voted on. The rules are going to be voted on April 23rd, so we're about 2 weeks away from getting a final, but we've already gotten a copy of the draft rules at this point. So far, I think it's looking good. To your point, Dustin, on timing, it's hard to tell when they're going to start doing certification testing because of COVID-19 and lack of ability to the FCC to have resources to go work on this in person. So hopefully we'd see something in the next 3 to 6 months formally, but back to what we were talking about earlier, let's go for these experimental licenses. So, I think we can work together to find out what microwave links are in your area and present that information to the FCC and probably look at starting to file these STAs. So we're going to probably do that, do some experimental ones just to shoot a few shots across the bow to let people know that we're interested in this. Airspan Mimosa has told the FCC we are interested in this, and since they did this for the 5.9 U-NII-4 band, we're hoping that they'll want to do the same thing here as well. A little bit more complex process, but I think this is something that we've got a shot to do rapidly. And again, our radios, a lot of them are already ready for the 6 gigahertz. So we don't have full 6 gig support. Some of our products support up to 6.4 gigahertz. Some of them support up to 6.2 gigahertz. But easily adding a couple hundred megahertz of spectrum, that'll be amazing with stuff that's already deployed in the field. You're not going to have to buy new gear in a lot of cases, which is a huge deal. I think we'll be pretty unique in our ability to have that radio to be able to do that with some of the A series and the C series and the B5C as well. I mean, some of these are going to be able to really be repurposable to go up and use more spectrum right away and get out of the noise.
Well, definitely a game changer. So I know most people are looking forward to this. So thanks, Jamie. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more thing, I just want to, we miss talking to all you at Wisp America, just to set people's minds at ease. We had one of our best quarters ever in the first quarter, even with a lot of it being, with a lot of people not being able to work in the office. So, as Dustin was saying, this isn't bad for the communications industry. We're just trying to do as much work as we can to keep the product flow going to support you all out there. So doing everything we can. As most of you know, we've moved our manufacturing to Malaysia. So we have very little supply chain concern coming out of China anymore. So that's a really big deal. I think hopefully we'll be able to make sure to keep that supply chain really going for you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jamie.
All right, Jeff and Eric. So because of the increased demand on internet services lately from home, what do you guys recommend to our customers about how to help their networks with that kind of congestion? What would you recommend them doing?
I would think one thing was to optimize available bandwidth for their part of the spectrum. If they're at narrower channels, say 2x40s, maybe they go up to 80s or single 80s. One thing to see if they can push have a little more throughput push through. That'd be one way to look at that. We might see some folks come in for some more RF tuning and some things in that case. I know we've been on global support chats for these last few weeks, looking at some of this as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think one thing that might be really important to do is don't forget the client radios. Specifically the customer premise equipment. It's often overlooked to optimize the channels on the in-house routers, but I think if you really want to get the most bang for the buck, you probably want to take a look at what the utilization looks like in your immediate location. With everyone using their routers and their wireless services, it's a more taxing system. So you may find that certain channels are more being used than others. Typically, channel 6 is what's used on 2.4, right out of the box. So if you buy a router down at Best Buy, plug it in, and you start using it immediately, chances are it's probably on channel 6. So if you are using 2.4 for your customer premise equipment, you may want to look at some of the less used channels. On 2.4, you have 3 non-overlapping channels, 1, 6, and 11. I would recommend to stay only on those channels. If you select any other channels in between those primary channels, there's a direct interference that can be caused for other users that are on the same spectrum. So just be mindful of that when you're selecting channels for 2.4. For 5 gigahertz, you want to, again, look for which channels are being least used. I would recommend, if you haven't done so already, to download MetaGeek. There's a program. It will provide you a real-time spectrum graph for your laptop computer, and you can take a look right from your computer what type of spectrum you're operating in, as well as what may be available. So there's a couple tools that I would recommend. Inside SSID program that is a freeware as well. Take a look at those, and take a look at your RF environment at your immediate home location, and optimize it accordingly.
Right.
And depending on the Wi-Fi router's manufacturer, right out of the box, if you grab something from Amazon or Best Buy, if you plug and play with the single or the dual band, 2.4 and or 5, plug and play wise out of the box, are these sometimes an auto channel select so they avoid bumping into each other in that home network with the neighbors 2.4? Or should you really go in and go manual and look at what's happening and go place your router somewhere?
Well, the auto channel, you'd think that all the
Yeah.
manufacturers would use auto channel right out of the box, but unfortunately there's no real standards. So really depend upon which manufacturer you go with. Some may have auto channel turned on immediately out of the box, whereas others are traditionally stuck on a certain channel. So yeah, I think it would be nice that auto channel would be on, but we know that customers, if they're not very well versed in the technology, they may just plug it in and, like you said, plug and play. So take a few minutes and take a look at your spectrum at your immediate location there. You might find that there's a lot of activity on one channel over the other. You want to select the least used channel for the best possible performance.
To give you an example of my home router, it has auto channel. It had it turned on when I got it from AT&T, but it would avoid DFS channels. Looking at Spectrum Analyzer, there is no other router in this complex that's using U-NII-4. So you want to know where I put my router? 80 megahertz channel right in the middle of U-NII-4.
There you go.
I have no interference problems whatsoever.
Your
So
max throughputs.
yeah, and another thing that go back to the original conversation. I know that a lot of the big providers have removed data caps, but they haven't removed, throttling or rate limiting. And so, if there's a lot of folks out there who aren't rate limiting their customers, maybe you should think about doing some kind of emergency rate limiting plan that kind of helps with your throughput issue as well. If you can't go out and put new APs up, or if you don't have any way to really do anything, you can institute like 20 or 30 megabits per customer. They don't need 100 megabit plans or 250 megabit plans. They just think they do.
I think there's a lot of work at home. So that's a great point. Look at the upload speeds for those Zooms and Skype meetings and Periscope upload speeds that are required. And obviously, there's probably more multiple, say, Netflix downstreams happening per household.
Oh, I bet.
I would guess, right?
Yeah, speaking about that, I was just going to mention that if you have any wired or wireless devices in your house that are doing streaming video, let's see, like Apple TV or Roku or something like that, I would recommend to rather use the wireless to instead use the wired portion of the network at your house and get the streaming video devices onto a wired network so that you're not consuming your wireless network at your house. That's just another tip you may want to look into.
Good point. Yeah, good point. I have a Fire Stick, for example, wireless. It's dual band, and it's probably 60 feet from the Wi-Fi router, and and so I thought, okay, 5 gig. Let's push the download speeds and stuff through. But then it started kind of getting a little chunky there or whatever, intermittent. So I went to 2.4 and 2.4 at less. Cut the reach down a little bit on 2.4 on the download, but it's just fine.
Right. Do you guys have any more suggestions to people with overloaded networks before we head out?
On the A5 products, the TPC, transmit power
control.
Yeah, TPC. So isn't that defaulted as well? So that's just part of the RF tuning and the maxing out the clients to the access point. Again, for different distances to those further clients compared to the close-up clients to the AP.
Yeah, TPC and rate adaptation runs in the background on our radios. Okay. And so that's by default a service that is constantly running to optimize the link. So
yeah. How about APC or UPSs? I've got a small UPS for backup. So if I have a little brownout in the house here, this one computer, there's a couple of computers in the house, but at least this one doesn't really see that glitch. It just kind of goes right on automatic AC power. I think those are important too for to prevent some spikes into your home equipment, your network devices at home and such. I would say that, and filtering, clean up some of those AC spikes and hits. You guys have any of those at home? UPS?
Well, I just run a laptop, so I don't have to worry about it.
That's clean. It's got its own battery system. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's it, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys joining remotely. Hopefully this video turns out well. Fingers crossed, stay at home. Hopefully this will be over soon. And like Jamie said, things are still going okay for Mimosa. We're doing well. We're still here for you guys. Jeff and Eric is still doing chat support. I'm still here via email. If you guys need anything, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're still working.
All right.
And with that, I guess we'll see you on the next episode of the Dustin and Eric podcast show. We'll see.
Good talking to everyone.
Yep.
Have a great rest of your week. Stay safe.
Let me know where you find those eggs.
Bake lots of cookies and bread if you can find flour and eggs.
Shortage.
Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe or follow button to stay up to date with our latest podcast, which will be available on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud.